Hi, Yen here. I am an English teacher and a slow reader, and in this video I have a reading vlog for Babel by R.F. Kuang. I was incredibly impressed by this book and I wanted to make a reading vlog of my thoughts on the book and then kind of reflect on my reading. So I hope you enjoy this video. So first off, what is Babel about? Babel is about Robin Swift, whose whole family in Canton has died of cholera. So Professor Lowell from Oxford takes him to England. Kind of Robin Swift has no choice but to go because the other option was to die at home. So he's not really given an option. So whilst living with Professor Lowell, he has to learn Greek and Latin and prepare to become a translator. This was in 1928, and then in 1936, Robin Swift, who by the way had to change his name, then enters the Royal Institute of Translation at Oxford, also called Babel. At Babel, Robin becomes friends with Rami from Calcutta, Victoire from Haiti, and Letty, who is the daughter of a white British admiral. But whilst being there and kind of growing up living at Professor Lowell's and studying, he kind of starts to realize that the translation skills of Robin and his friends are being used as a way to maintain British Empire and colonize even further. And then this book kind of discusses all the complex feelings about enjoying academia, but at the same time realizing that the fact that Robin and his friends are at academia means that someone else has had to suffer for it. The fact that their skills are being used for something that they obviously do not want it to be used in. Then eventually Robin kind of gets recruited into Irma society, and the goal of the society is to bring Babel down. This book also explores the differing experiences of Robin, Rami, Victoire and Letty, and also explores the perspective of those white British colonizers who feel like it's their God-given right to colonize these spaces. I don't know if that explanation of the story is any good, but I do want to kind of avoid spoilers as much as I can. There are minimal spoilers in this video, I'm sorry about that, but basically this is a really interesting look into the intersection of academia and colonization from the lens of translation. I have started reading Babel. I've read 2 chapters, and those 2 chapters really laid out kind of the introduction and the basis of the story, and it's been really interesting. It's so cool to kind of see like, okay, this will come up later and so on. I think a quote that really kind of hit me was, never, Robin thought, would he understand these men who talked of the world and its movements like a grand chess game where countries and peoples were pieces to be moved and manipulated at will. So I feel like that really sums up the dynamic between Robin and, you know, the elite, the academic class, or however it's called, that he's kind of being pushed into. What I really noticed as well is that some of the conversations that Professor Powell would have with these elite, racist, colonialist, all of those things, professors and academics and so on, they are very reminiscent of today's conversations amongst a certain kind of people. It was also really sad to read Robin lose his whole family, and it's also sad to be calling him Robin because it's not his real name. He was forced to change it. I really hope it comes up later on, his real name. And it was just so interesting but sad and like emotionally impacting to see Professor Lowell just mold Robin into someone that he wants Robin to be, rather than let him be himself, like down to his name and interests and so on. It's just really a harrowing story, a very like makes you think beginning, but also like there is so much more to come. I have a lot more to go, and I did consider like annotating and using tabs and all that for this, because I feel like it deserves that kind of special attention, but it's not really, because I'm too scared to like write here or underline here, you know, with my not so steady hands. I'm really happy I've picked it up this now. It's gonna take a while though. They just took the student's blood, and it wasn't like a nurse or a doctor who did that, it was a professor. Oof, that's heavy. Just a quick note, I'm reading on a Sunday. I just finished chapter 6, and oh my god, this book is so good. Oh my god. I'm a bit scared though, because it's gonna be intense, and I know it, but oh my god, it's so good. Okay, it's been about a week since my last reading update. I tried to film like a little bit of those like reading clips, but I just feel so awkward trying to do that. I don't know how other people on booktube do it, but anyways, I'm now on page 203 on Babel, and I think it's such good writing and such interesting story and plot lines, and I am having a little bit of a hard time trying to understand the concept of silver. I'm not really exactly sure what they're doing with it. They're using it as a translation tool and as kind of currency for wealth. I like, maybe it's because I'm not used to reading fantasy, maybe that's why I'm having a hard time understanding it. But still, nevertheless, this book has been really interesting, really entertaining. It sucks that I don't have much time to read it in my daily busy life. One thing that I kind of noticed as I was reading is that they would describe these specific moments during the school year or semester, and then they would skip through many months in the story, which I think it's interesting that they would omit kind of the boring, not boring, but like with the times that not as much is happening, they would kind of just jump over them. Interesting choice of pace there. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. So I want to talk about the characters for a bit, and I'll try to avoid spoilers. So Robin was molded into being a translator by Professor Lovell without any of like Robin's consent. Obviously, the other option was to die, basically. His kind of love for reading is used against him, and his background is used against him. The fact that he can speak Cantonese and other languages is used as a tool for expansion of the British Empire. So there's this complex discussion of Robin enjoying academia, enjoying his studies, but eventually understanding fully how his skills is being used against his own people. Rami also was not really in the freedom of saying no when it came to him also coming to study at Oxford. He discusses it more from the get-go compared to Robin, that he kind of had no choice to this path, but he is also kind of enjoying being with Robin and other friends, but at the same time he feels that he is being judged, and he acknowledges how fucked up that judgment is, but in the end it's even stronger and stronger, his fight against Babel and its intentions. Victoire at first is presented as someone who is interested in studying and being academic, but quite quickly she notes that her being a black woman is repeatedly used against her, used to ridicule her, used to belittle her and her background. So the story is a lot of her perspective of her experience as a black woman at Babel, but at the same time the narrative on Victoire is also about how strongly she stands against those people who belittle her, even if she cannot be really public about it, but eventually she is. Letty is an interesting one. So her whole life, basically, Letty had to fight against kind of patriarchal expectations of her just to get married and not further her studies. But then when she gets the chance to study at Babel, she sees it as the epitome of equality and epitome of success for herself, because she gets to be seen equal to men. Now she does get discriminated against for being a woman quite frequently, but still she views that the fact that she gets to study at Babel is her being equal to the other male students. And she doesn't really understand why Robin, Rami, and Victoire have these difficult feelings about being at Babel, because to her it's the ultimate way to be equal and succeed. The friendship good was really sweet in the beginning, but it's also understandable why kind of everything fell apart. It did have really sweet moments between the characters, and I really liked the way the relationship between these characters was presented as very human, like not considering if you can trust the others, your friends, wanting to trust them but you feel like you can't, leaning on them, and so on. As for other characters, I don't want to give away way too much, but I feel like Professor Lowell and his friends and much of the white academia, they really well represents how these people in high positions see white supremacy as the way that things should be, that they are superior just because they are white and there's nothing else to it, and that they are allowed to be discriminatory and oppressive towards people from marginalized groups and people from different countries and of different races. For example, there's this scene of, I don't remember names, but these academics, white academics, talk about how much better white British people are compared to Chinese people and say awful racist things about Chinese people while Robin is present. And then Robin notes like, hey, I am Chinese, what are you saying? And then literally someone just shuts it down like, no, you're not. It was really hard to read. It is the reality for so many people, but at the same time it was so realistic and well presented. Whilst this book, it covered really difficult and hard topics and some awful things happen, it was still written in an entertaining manner. I was so afraid of the length of the book, but I read this in 2 weeks, which is a really short time for me considering that I work as well. I'm on page 319 and I'm just so amazed at this book and at this story and how well it articulates all of the complex perspectives of colonialism within individuals, within societies, within nations, and how disgusting is not even a word enough to describe how awful and horrible and just the worst. No word is enough to describe how fucking horrible colonization is, and this book discusses it so well from so many perspectives, and I'm just so amazed at every page and how reflective they are of today's society. Genuinely, there's some of the conversations that the Englishmen were having while being in Canton, those could be conversations being had today, in my opinion. And I'm just so proud of Robin for standing up to Professor Lowell, even though Professor Lowell keeps gaslighting and keeps telling Robin that he's ungrateful when he's just raising very valid points about his life and his background. And I'm just so amazed by this book. It's definitely becoming a favorite, and I'm a little over halfway through. I just read chapter 23. If you know, you know. I should have suspected it. I don't understand. I knew something would happen, but I didn't expect something like that. I literally just read what happened. My heart is really tight in my chest. I didn't expect this to happen. I expected something when Letty left the room. I'm trying to keep this spoiler free as well, not spoiler free, but like minimal spoilers. So it's like such a, even though it's really hard and difficult and sad, turn of events with Letty. It makes sense. It makes sense because she was the only white person there, I guess. I'm not sure if there were others. Just like, I'm too stunned to speak. This book is so fucking good. Okay, I finished book 4 and I actually was gonna stop there, but then I just wanted to keep going. That hasn't happened to me in a while, where I can't put a book down while reading. I usually like decisively read 1, 2, 3 chapters and then put it down. But I don't know, so much was happening, a lot of sad things, a lot of heartbreaking, devastating, awful consequences of colonialism, and was heavy, and like the author is just so great at capturing what it's like to live in this colonialist society, and I'm just amazed by the story and how well it's presented. Hello. I finished it. Tears were shed. I'm kind of stunned right now, too stunned to speak, honestly. That was a lot. I guess the only comment that comes to mind is like, I love the conversations between Victoire and Robin in the end. I can't believe I read a book that had over 500 pages in 2 weeks. Quite proud of that. What a reading experience. Wow, I feel so lucky to have read this book. I feel speechless. Wow. I'll try to have some more coherent words later on, but at this moment I am really happy to have read this. I thought it was incredible. Whoa. So in this book, colonization is spoken from different levels, so how it impacts individuals and how it impacts different nations. And I think it's done really masterfully and in a way that really reflects the reality, even if it's a fictional book. And there is a lot of emphasis that colonizers kind of see colonizing and oppressing people as a God-given right to them, whilst then on the other hand we are shown the ramifications of this oppression and colonization of different countries. And the representation of academia was really interesting as well. It was so intriguing how the moments one of the main characters, Robin, Rami, and Victoire, kind of criticize academia, they were told by professors or their white counterparts, like, why are you complaining? You're literally in a privileged position. You're literally so lucky. Why are you complaining? Like, not even allowing any type of criticism of academia because you happen to be in academia is really interestingly represented. And translation being used as a tool for colonization rather than bringing people together and helping people understand each other. I feel like that was a really important perspective to bring it, and how much English being a lingua franca and at times being seen as superior to other language, how damaging it can be. And this is definitely an example. Well, the story here represents how awful it can be if translation is used as a tool for oppression. So I rarely rate books because, I don't know, I feel like 1 to 5 stars, it doesn't really represent my full feelings of a book, but this is definitely a 5-star read and one of my favorite books because the themes were discussed really well, the characters were incredibly represented, and I just think the theme of colonization, how it impacts on the personal level and national level, that was just really masterfully presented, and I'm really happy to have read this book. So I would give it definitely a 5 stars, even more than that. I would give it a 5 stars because it made me feel so many things. It made me feel angry for our main character. It made me feel sad. It made me feel heartbroken. It made me laugh whenever Robin and his friends would have fun, and every time Robin and Rami really understood each other and had a heart to heart, I really felt it deep in my soul. Like, this book made me feel so many things. And then after reading, I just felt this really deep sense of being thankful that I got to read this book. Okay, so those were my thoughts on Babel. I tried to keep the spoilers to minimum. I know a lot of people have already read this book, but I still wanted to give as little spoilers as I can because there are still people who haven't read this book. I mean, this literally came out last year. I hope you enjoyed this reading vlog. Sorry if it's a bit a mess and just me repeating how many times I love this book and how amazing it is, because it really is. And at the time of reading, I was just so amazed that I couldn't think of any other words. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video. I never promote my social media, but since I'm trying to post more book reviews on Instagram, follow me if you want to see that at jenskosmos. I post poetry on Instagram as well at poetryofjk. My Twitter is jenskosmos. And I hope I see you in the next one. Bye!